There is an expression which I heard many times as I prepare for a job interview. They may be interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them. Asking questions when you attend a job interview makes you interested and enthusiastic, which is something all employers look for, no matter the role. So in this video, I'm going to give you 8 or 9 tips on how you can stand out in a job interview, but also learn more about the job and the company and the team so you can make a more informed decision if you want this role or you're going to hold out for another one. It is important to achieve a balance. You do not want to come across as you're grilling the interviewer. After all, you're the one applying for the job. There are also types of questions that you need to save for later on. Things like salary, holiday allowance. It's better to save those when you actually have a job offer on the table and you can clarify these certain things. But do try and ask if there is a range on the salary to make sure you're all on the same page. Make sure you don't ask questions that can be found on the company's website. This can kind of be embarrassing. Timing is also important. I think there is no need to save all the questions until the end because it's not a conversation. It's them asking you questions and you asking them questions at the end. And it's kind of like very one-sided at the beginning from one direction and very one-sided at the end on the other direction. If you have the opportunity, ask your questions in conversation as the interview goes on. It feels more natural. It shows you're engaged. It shows that you're interested and you're having a conversation with the person. At the end of the day, an interview is just a conversation. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe below and the bell button so you get notified every time I post a video and go live. Preparation is key though. Make sure you have considered your questions. Maybe write them in priority order so if you don't get time, if time doesn't allow, because time will go fast. You might have 1 or 2 hour interview and you think, oh, there's plenty of time. It can go fast, especially when you're having fun, you get along well with the people also in the meeting. So make sure you have them in priority order so you can tick off the more important ones to you first. Hopefully the money one or the holiday allowance isn't there at the top. Here are some example questions that you can think about and ask. Ask about the role. What do they do day to day? What does a typical day look like? What responsibilities are in your remit? You could also ask, can you see examples of the project that you'll be working on? Sometimes they might not show you this because it could be super private, which I still find very strange, but a lot of companies are a bit kind of strange about this. Fine, let them be like that. But maybe you can get a demo of the product. Maybe you could even speak to 1 or 2 of the team members, especially if your interview is around lunchtime. When I used to have interviews, that's why I used to like having it around lunchtime. Therefore, maybe I could chat to people during their lunch break. And sometimes they take me out for lunch and it'd be quite an informed and chilled discussion. Check in advance the company's website, or if they have a GitHub organization with their project. It's great for you to be aware of the projects and technologies and the process that they do, and also bringing this up in the conversation. It looks like you've done your homework, and you can actually then ask them why they do things in a certain way in the project, why they're using certain automation, like you have actions and certain actions, why they're doing things in a certain way. I mean, try and even get involved in the conversation on GitHub before. Don't make it too obvious you're doing it for an interview, but if you can add value to an issue or a GitHub discussion or a pull request, even if you're reviewing someone else's pull request, you don't have to submit one. If you can, that's great. Anything you can add value or get involved in the conversation, I guarantee you will help you. So if they mention one of their projects in the discussion that you're having and you can specifically refer to something that's happening on that repo on GitHub, again, you will really stand out and you will stay in their memory. They will remember you, which I think is really important. If they're doing 5 to 10 interviews a day of people and maybe for 1 or 2 weeks, you really want to stay in the forefront of their mind for only good reasons though, nothing bad. Also show that you're looking to the future. Ask, do you expect the main responsibilities for this position to change in the next 6 months to a year? Show that you're looking for the future. I think that shows engagement, but also shows that you're looking for the long term, not for kind of to make a quick buck. Do also ask about the company. That's why it's vital to research the company ahead of the interview. You might find something on their website that you think is quite interesting, but you might want to dig a bit deeper. Then you could say, on your website, I read about X and Y and Z, but could you tell me a bit more about it? If you can't find any of their future products or roadmap online, and you could ask these questions, you could say, what new products do you have coming up? What new features? What are your plan for growths? But if it's on the website, maybe ask more of a specific question. You could ask what the company's goals are in 1 to 3 years. How is the team going to support hitting those goals? How do they collaborate together? What is the process they use? I also think it's really important to ask about the culture. What's the likelihood that the company's website will reflect the type of culture culture. It's quite difficult to portray that, and a lot of people just write a lot of kind of marketing BS on there. So it's important to chat to people. Unfortunately, the truth may only actually come out to you when you actually start working there after a few months, but there's no harm in trying to understand the culture. Again, I don't think getting free food is good company culture, and sometimes can be a bit toxic. So do be wary. See if you can reach out to people on social media that work for those companies. And you could say, I'm going for a job interview, any suggestions, any recommendations. They might not commit to any actual hardcore details, but you could maybe look through their timeline, see what they're tweeting about, and try and do a few different demographics of people that will give you a better idea. There are questions you could ask beyond what's the company culture like that could be quite interesting, give you some insights. For example, how would you describe the work environment here? Is it typically collaborative or more independent? You could ask about team events that you do together. Is it kind of beers and pizza on a Friday night, very bro culture, or are they looking to do something more collaborative together, kind of like Crystal Maze that some companies do in London, for example? Can you work together as a team to solve challenges? Also, an interesting question that I find that people sometimes ask when I interview for my clients is, what's some of your favorite company traditions? It's always quite interesting to see this. Another question you could ask that I think is quite interesting, and I haven't heard many people ask this, but do you ever do joint events with other companies or departments? Again, that shows collaboration. You could ask, do they sponsor any communities, any meetup groups, any conferences or events? Again, that could be really interesting and lead into the conversation. Is there a budget so that you could actually go to events as well, and maybe the company can pay for learning and networking? It's important to get a sense for the interviewer's opinion when you're working there. Is the enthusiasm flowing easily? I mean, that's a really good sign. Building up a rapport with that person, if you have common interest, it might be in the tech world, it might be outside the tech world, but it helps to make you more memorable and helps the conversation to flow kind of more naturally, like you're chatting with a friend. Some other questions you might ask, which could be a bit different, not asking specifically about this company, but maybe a comparison with their work experience. You could say something like, what's the difference about working here than the previous place that you've worked? And what's your favorite part about working for this company? I think another really interesting question is, ask what it takes to succeed in the company. If you want to know if this role is for you, and if you're to do well, you need to know what success looks like in the company. How is it measured? Do they have SLAs, or do they have some other form of metrics? Consider asking what the performance expectations of the position are over the first 12 months. What is a performance review process like? I think it's really interesting to know. Some companies just do it kind of ad hoc. Some have formal every quarterly, 6 months, yearly. And you could ask how often that happens as well. Definitely ask what metrics they will evaluate you against. Is it against other colleagues? Is it against past colleagues? Is it against yourself? Hopefully it's against yourself, because as long as you're doing better than yourself, then you're improving. It doesn't matter what the person next to you is doing. Hopefully in most companies nowadays, it is 2022. Hopefully there's no ninjas and rock stars and people who work all night and all weekend, and yeah, the company can't survive without this person. Well, that's no good for 101 reasons. But that's a discussion for another time. I mentioned this briefly before, but do ask about professional development. I mean, this topic is really important. And if it's your desire to succeed and learn more and grow your network and expand and go through the ranks and all that good stuff, then you want to know how they're going to support you doing that. Do they provide opportunities? Do they provide mentorship within the company? Do they provide budget for you to buy courses, attend conferences and events? Some companies give you membership to learning platforms like LinkedIn Learning or enterprise platforms where you get extra learning materials and you can watch as much or as little as you want. And sometimes also the performance metrics is on how many courses that you take throughout the year, which is quite interesting, gives you that encouragement to do more. Do ask what the opportunities are for advancement in professional development. Some companies wait until the person above you either goes up or leaves, but then other times you want to see if maybe you can move sideways into a different position, right? If you're a tester, you might want to become a developer. If you're a developer, you might want to become a tester. And it's not necessarily going up or down, it's just going left and right, but doing what you enjoy more. And if you enjoy it, then you will do a lot better. And you can ask about historically where successful employees, what they have done, where they have gone, and maybe they could give you some examples. They could say, this person joined 3 years ago, and now they're a team lead, and they're leading a team of 4 people. And it's great to hear those sorts of stories and to give you reasons why. They spoke at a conference at this event, or they write blog posts on this, or they just really an awesome person motivating and supporting the team. I think it's really important to hear some of those success stories. Definitely ask about the team that you're going to be specifically working with. You might not be able to meet the team until the final round of the interview, but hopefully you can meet them on social media. I think it's a great way to see what they're up to. But if you can try and get a feeling for the team, I think that's really useful. So you could ask about the team, who you're going to be working with, what's the makeup. You don't need their name and so forth, but maybe you could ask about the diversity of the team, maybe what the skills of the team are made up of. Are there 3 developers, 2 testers, 1 designer, technical writer, and so forth. We're really interested to know who you're working with, because you can learn from different people and you can get an appreciation for other skills within the team. Do definitely ask who you'll be reporting to. Are you reporting to the person you're speaking to in the interview? I mean, that could be quite interesting, but a lot of the time that's not always the case. And if you're managing people, if you're a team lead or a manager, then you could ask about who you report to, but also who's going to report to you. How many people are you looking after? What are their skills? What are their experiences? And what are their strengths and weaknesses? And also do ask what are the challenges the team faces. I think that's really interesting to see. They could say, right now we're being challenged with writing automated tests to improve our code quality. And that could be something you come in and champion, and that could put you on the map. I think it's always interesting to know if they're planning to expand the team further. You know, do they expect to hire more people in this department in the next 6 months? Do they have a growth strategy? It might be worth checking what other departments do they work closely with. Does the team currently work closely with an ops team, a DevOps team, the marketing team? It could be quite interesting to see how they collaborate. Do they throw things over the fence and work in silos, or do they work quite closely with other departments? I touched on this briefly, but maybe ask about the challenges. I'm not saying you can come in and solve all their challenges, but maybe you can shed some light on it from your past experience or from some research that you've done in the meantime. And it could be really useful to have a fresh pair of eyes and share some information on that topic. But it does show that you want a challenge and you want to help move the team and the project forward. And I think that really shows enthusiasm and passion. I think that's really useful. And you don't have to ask some of these questions directly. You could kind of build it into the conversation. When they say, oh, our team has delivered this project a couple of weeks early, you can say, great, what were the challenges that they faced to do that? So you can kind of subtly fit it in without being too obvious. Or if they said, okay, the team's delivered the project a few weeks late, so they're running a bit behind, you could then again ask, well, what were the reasons why they delivered late? Did they underestimate? Did they have some technical issues? Did someone leave the team? I think it'd be quite interesting to give you an idea of how the company and the team work. If they're not asking a lot of questions about you, try and get them to ask more questions about you. Try and be open. Obviously don't talk all the time, give them a chance to get involved in the conversation, but maybe you could share some information about yourself that they could then ask more details and dive deeper. Because you definitely want to come across confident, but you don't want to come across overconfident and cocky. That can look really bad and put people off. When you find the interview situation is kind of closing to an end and you can feel that they're winding it down, there are also some questions that you could ask. You could say, is there anything about my background or resume that makes you question whether I'm a good fit for the role? And they might be having some doubt, but you could clear that up really quickly, because the way you write things on your resume, which is why I always say use GitHub, is they might have a doubt and you clear it up and put it in their mind that you are actually the right person for this role, or unless you don't have a good feel for the role and you're kind of happy to have the interview finished. But I highly recommend, even if you're not too interested in the role, treat the interview as if you wanted it, therefore it's really good practice for you. And you can always ask, is there anything else I could provide you that could be helpful? Because they might be looking at GitHub, but it might be super active and they can't find anything that you really wanted to see. Hopefully you've included it on your resume, but they might say, can you share an issue or a pull request that you're really proud of? And remember, it doesn't have to be large pull requests or anything like that. It just needs to be valuable, to add value to the project and the team, and always give context. But I'm not going to go into too much detail in that now, because I talk about this all the time on Twitter and YouTube. Do ask about the next steps. What's the likelihood that your interviewer will conclude with what to expect next? So you could ask. There is a high likely chance that they will, but if they haven't, do check what the next steps are and you can kind of get a feeling for it. And do ask about the next steps in the interview process. You know, is there another round of interviews? Is there a takeaway test? Is there a pair programming situation that you need to do? Do find out more about that so you know what to expect and you can kind of see how organized they are as well. I hope that video was really useful to you. Just to conclude a few things, make sure you ask good questions. Put your high priority ones first. Try and build it into the conversation you're having with the interviewer. Don't grill them, but make sure it's a two-way conversation and try and lead them down into the conversation that you want them to. So if you want them to ask about your GitHub, try and ask about their GitHub, and that will spark the idea for them to ask you about your GitHub. I think that's really important. You can kind of slightly guide the conversation in the way that you want that works well for you. If you want to learn more about accelerating your career through open source, in web development, freelancing, digital nomad, any of that great stuff, then don't forget to come and chat to us between live streams and video in our Discord. Link in the description below to the awesome EdiHub community. A big shout out to the amazing members. We have an awesome GitHub organization where you can contribute open source within a few minutes. I'll link to the video right here, right now for you to watch.